Good morning, everyone. This is David with Bolivar Live. We're here in the Bolivar Live studio in downtown Crystal Beach, Texas for our Monday morning with Sandra Dial show. Sandra, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, David.
Real quick, I want to talk about these signs. And I saw a post yesterday on Facebook where the volunteer fire departments down here will come by your house, put up these signs. They can either go this way or they'll turn the numbers and go this way. And they're doing that so that it's easy for them to find. These numbers are reflective. And so in the dark, they're trained to look for these signs with their lights. With no light, they'll actually be able to see it most of the time. And so if you have a home down here and you're looking for a better way, especially if it's a rental and people don't realize what the address is. And we're going to have a show about if you're renting down here exactly what you really need to know, so that if you do need to call out emergency personnel, you'll know exactly what's going on. But I want to take a look at the beachfront real quick. We had a lot of rain down here this weekend. We're about flooded, ditches were full again, but man, yesterday the sun came out a little bit yesterday afternoon, and you can see here we've got clear skies and it's sunny skies in paradise. So if you're looking for a getaway, wanting to take a day trip this week, it might be the week to do it. And I don't know about you, but the humidity this morning wasn't as bad as it had been. I know when Chris was out on the deck drinking coffee right before I left, I walked out and we were watching the hummingbirds and it felt good.
It is nice out there this morning.
So every Monday morning we have a show, and it's Monday morning with Sandra Dial. She's made a commitment to educate not only home buyers but people interested in selling their home, everything they need to know about the real estate down here. And so Sandra, thanks for joining us this morning. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, David, I'm trying to take a stair step from the beginning, as in like for buyers, what you can expect as far as obligations, and basically buyers hiring their own agent to represent them. And I think that that's very important to understand that concept, as well as you don't really want to hop around when it comes to a buyer's agent. You want to go ahead and make a commitment to an agent that's going to share all of their information that they have about the local real estate, insurance guidelines. There's so much that we can share with you as an expert of coastal property. And so if you have any questions, and many times we do have questions about when a buyer's agent or someone that is hopefully they want to become your buyer's agent, they're going to ask you to sign a commitment notice. It's really a buyer's rep agreement according to the title of the document. But basically what this is stating is it talks about the fact that this agent or an agent that you're working with is going to pour their self out to you as far as information, guide you through the beginning to the end, all the way to negotiating that contract for you to acquire that property that you're dreaming of having.
And we talked about this a little bit last week about using an agent in the area, whether it's Houston, Beaumont, coastal, but especially coastal, because you want an agent that knows the codes, the insurances, just everything about, because it's different down here than if they were going to buy a house at Lake Conroe or Lake Livingston or in Houston.
Very
and we
true.
talked about that last week, and so this sort of falls into that. Someone that knows the area that's going to work for them and look out for their best interest.
Well, and rightfully so. And I had a lot of phone calls from buyers who say, well, I've called so-and-so and they're not calling me back. Perhaps they showed me some properties last week or last weekend. Well, think about the fact that if they're not calling you back, then you did not make a commitment to them that they were going to represent you. We really, spending the day with someone that will not make a commitment, it's hard for me, example, to just show property and not talk about real estate and the do's and the don'ts. Well, that's giving advice. I'm going to use this as an example. It may not be the perfect one, but that'd be like going to an attorney and asking them for all this legal advice, and yet you have not paid them a what do they call it, a consignment or a fee at least to get started. We're not asking for a fee up front, but all we are asking for is a commitment that if you want us to spend our time with you, that you will call us whenever you want to come back down here and look at property again. And I know that may sound a little silly to you. Maybe you won't get along with that agent after you've spent the day with them. Well, then just say so. I would like to break that commitment. I'd like to try another agent perhaps that can give me better advice. Personality conflicts even.
You see realtors that advertise a buyer's agent. I guess this is this what it sort of pertains to?
Actually, there are specialists that their main goal is working with buyers, and they would be a buyer specialist. Now, any agent can work either side. Some enjoy working one side or the other, being a listing agent only or a buyer's agent only. Most of us enjoy working dual sides, representing a seller or a buyer.
And this isn't binding as far as is it binding if they go to you and say, okay, we're going to sign this and you're going to be our rep, and then they go out and someone says, man, my buddy's a realtor, let him make the 2% or something, and they go buy from someone with someone else. Where's this fall when that happens, if they buy a house that you show them?
Well, that is called, the agent has procured that interest to purchase that property. And the agent that procured the interest legally is rightful to be your representation, to write the contract for you.
And that's what
this document protects us from. So I guess what I'm really wanting to share with you is, don't be discouraged if you've worked with an agent down here or at Crystal Beach or anywhere, and perhaps they're a little sluggish in calling you back. Well, perhaps they've spent 5 days with you showing you multiple properties, but you've not made the commitment to use them exclusively. This commitment can be for just 1 day. There are questions to be asked. The agent will ask you how you want to fill this out, and then so that's negotiable. But one thing that scares, I think, buyers with this agreement is there is a sentence in here that talks about what the broker fees are. And then the buyer fears that they're going to be held responsible to pay that commission. Well, if you're looking at properties, guys, that are represented by a listing agent, that listing agent has a contract with that seller already in place that they are responsible to pay the commissions to the brokers. The buyer is only going to be held responsible if by chance you ask that agent to show you a for sale by owner. That's why we have that protection clause in there, that if we are working with you as a buyer's agent, showing you property, and then after the meeting is over with the agent, you're riding around and you stop and you see a for sale by owner sign in the yard, and you go knock on the door. And you talk to the seller and you decide that that may be the property that you really want to buy. So you start negotiating with that seller, the for sale by owner, and then you call that agent back and ask her to write your contract. It's very difficult for us to make sure that we're going to get paid for doing our legal documentation for that purchase.
So that's just if on a for sale by owner.
That is the main reason that 3%, which is our typical broker commission on one side, is listed on this agreement. And that is what frightens people for signing it.
Well, and this brings up another thing, you don't mind if someone has, and they don't know real estate, they don't know the contracts, but maybe someone came down here and found a property or found a house that they like that is for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. You'll help them on that with one of these. If they came in and said, Sandra, we found a house that we'd like to buy, but we don't know about contracts, we don't know about, all the fees and everything and how to go about doing it. Can you help us? And so you can help them and still do the contracts and walk them through it so that they know exactly what they're getting into.
Well, yes, we can. The problem that arises is if the buyers have already spoken with the seller of that for sale by owner, they've already begun to negotiate what the seller will take, and that seller has not taken into concession a fee to a broker or for an agent. So at that point, the seller could say, I refuse to pay for an agent. If I wanted an agent, I would have listed my house with an agent. So that's where it gets to be a little testy.
But if the person purchasing the home, can they agree to pay you a percentage for helping them?
The best case scenario, David, is if you're looking around and you see a for sale by owner home that you would like to actually look at, call an agent, have that agent contact that seller, and then the communication begins immediately with the seller and the agent, and basically stating that I have a client interested in purchasing or looking at your property, and I want to know is if I bring them and I represent them and write their documents for them, are you willing to pay me a commission to do that work? And that then is negotiated between the seller and the agent, and then everything's good to go.
Okay.
They become responsible. The seller becomes responsible then to pay the agent for representing the buyer. And you want buyer's representation, guys. There are too many things that can go wrong, and you're not even aware of it until it's too late.
Well, and we were talking about it when we were drinking coffee a while ago, talking about, and Moody was there, we talking about all the insurances. Mm-hmm. If you're financing a home, the insurances you have to have and why you have to have each one. And this is something we're going to cover and maybe even get an insurance person in here with us one day.
Good.
And so there's a lot down here. The financing is even a little different down here because a lot of these are second homes. And we're going to cover that. And so if you have questions or maybe you've purchased a property down here and you found something out that you haven't heard us talk about that we're going to do a show on it, shoot us an email. Sandra, what's your email if anyone has any questions?
It's pretty easy. Sandra Dial at KW.com.
Or you can leave us a message on Facebook. You can get hold of me down at the Tourism Center. But we want to make sure that whenever people come down here and hopefully use one of the local agents because they know the area, they know the insurances, they know the zones, and Lord knows zones are changing, insurance, especially insurances are changing. And so you're really better off working with a local agent. And if you want the agent to give you 100% or 200%, I guess that's where this comes in, the agreement. And it'd be just like an agreement. We've made an agreement to do this show, and you've made the commitment to do the show. And so, it's just covering everyone's tail.
It really is. Real estate is it's a legal transaction, and if not written properly, somebody is not being covered. Whether it's seller's disclosure, liabilities, it's endless. It's really. I'm not saying that you shouldn't sell your home yourself. Many of you are successful in doing so, but there are a lot of problems that result afterwards that nobody talks about or they don't hear about.
Title transfers, everything.
Many things, David, especially in the coastal community. Insurance is a big issue. If you're going to get a loan, you've got to have all three insurances: your wind, your flood, and then your homeowners. You don't think about that. You and I talk about that often, David, and it can change the scope as to whether you can afford that to buy the home.
Well, and that's what, I was talking to someone earlier. In fact, it might have been when we were down there. Chris and I had looked at a house, and the payment was going to be about $1,200, which was awesome. But the insurance was $1,000, almost as much as a house. And so that's something, it's part of the coastal community. It's part of paradise. is everything's higher down here, but people know that, and it's a way to relax down here. And maybe next week we can do the show from that house we did the Matterport at. But when I went back to do the 360 view on it, I stood on the deck and the wind was blowing, and I was like, oh man, I wouldn't give this up for. It was hot, but I wouldn't give it up for the world down here, and that's the way most people are once they get down here. But on another note, people have to know that we're in the coastal community. We're in paradise. Everyone wants a house down here, and a lot of people come down here just to look.
Yeah.
And for a realtor to go out and spend 6, 7, 8 hours, go get keys from houses if they don't have a lockbox, you deserve a commitment, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I would like to say, this commitment notice or document, it can be limited to just that day.
Yeah.
Just the properties that agent has shown you. It doesn't have to be a marriage. It doesn't have to go long term, because you can set the date as to when this is active, as in the day that you start working with that agent, and say, okay, yeah, you could even say it's just for that day if you want to. But that agent then is going to make a list of the homes that she's shown you, and if you were to decide to go back and purchase those homes, then she is eligible for a commission.
Great, and she deserves it.
Most definitely.
He, whoever.
Yeah.
Well, Sandra, it's about 15 till. I know they're probably tired of listening to me. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you, David.
And how can people get hold of you if they want to call you, or your website?
Well, the email address that I shared with you, Sandra Dial, which is my name, and then at kw.com. My website is Dial, D-I-A-L, the letter N, the number 2, and then realestate.com.
Great.
That's my website.
And your office is in Crystal Beach Plaza, just catty corner from Bolivar Tourism.
Absolutely. Someone should be there always Monday through Friday, and then we're in and out quite a bit on the weekend showing property.
Great. Well, we're going to head on out. Thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks, Sandra, for coming in. And we look forward to seeing you next Monday morning for Monday Morning with Sandra Dial. Until next time, this is David with Bolivar Live. Explore Bolivar Peninsula. You'll love it. And God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time, guys. Bye-bye.